Capitol Report is a production of Senate Media Services.
Should penalties be increased for protesters who demonstrate on freeways and at airports? Should protesters be liable for the costs incurred by police during demonstrations? We'll hear from lawmakers confronting the issues. Stay tuned for this and more on this week's Capitol Report. Welcome to this week's program. I'm Shannon Lurkey. In the wake of recent protests and demonstrations in the Twin Cities, Republicans have authored several bills that would address penalties to protesters. The Senate Judiciary Committee recently heard public testimony on a bill that would increase the penalties for protesters who block highways, airports, and transit. Here are some highlights from that meeting.
The Supreme Court of the United States has said many times over the years that public order and public peace are just as important to our form of government in the United States as freedom of speech. The Supreme Court has established a balancing test for these competing interests by establishing time, place, and manner restrictions. In order to pass constitutional muster, a law must be, first, content neutral, which this bill is because we are not saying anything about who can say what or anything like that. Secondly, to pass, a law must be narrowly tailored to serve a significant government interest. The government has a significant interest in keeping the streets open and available for movement, as the Supreme Court put in a 1965 case, and the government definitely has a compelling interest in public safety. And thirdly, for the law to pass, there must be ample alternatives remaining available for communication of information.
I don't agree with you standing on 94. I don't agree with you blocking highways, but I understand where it's coming from. Do you honestly think that you penalizing people? It's already against the law. Do you honestly think that you're raising the fine? It's already a fine. That's not going to stop us. What's going to stop people from protesting is people like you coming outside, finding out what it is you can do to help the people that are mourning, that have a problem with the injustice that is being served to us on a dish.
I've heard it said that the reason for this bill to increase punishment from misdemeanors to gross misdemeanors is because it will act as a deterrent, and we need further punishment. I have never, in my 40-some years of representing and or prosecuting, heard that changing a misdemeanor to a gross misdemeanor is somehow going to act as a deterrence.
When the legal methods of communicating to you that we need change aren't working for us, that is why we would break a law. I would just ask you to consider what must be going through people's heads when they do something like stand on a freeway for hours in the cold and block traffic and risk arrest and are arrested if their concerns were not something that you need to consider. And I also just want to make a promise, finally, that if this bill passes, if this legislation goes into effect and black people and people of color are still being murdered by police, I'll see you on the freeway. This isn't going to deter me.
Joining me in the studio is the author of the Senate bills, Senator Bill Ingebrigtsen. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Shannon.
As many as 10 states are currently in the process of drafting legislation to regulate public dissent. You've authored two bills in the Senate having to do with penalties for public protests and cost recovery of such demonstrations. What is the rationale?
Well, regulating public dissent, I don't think that's a real accurate description of what's going on. Not any of us, the 67 senators, at least that I work with here in the Minnesota Senate, want to squelch any First Amendment rights at all. But there comes a time during these public demonstrations that public are able to get their message out, but that goes over the top when public safety, the potential of public safety gets interfered with, or the movement of people having to go to and from commerce, especially on I-94 when we've had a couple of those incidents. That's, I think, then is when they actually go over the top. And they actually, quite frankly, I think in order, a lot of people think they lose their messaging. And furthermore, they also cost lots of tax dollars. And folks in the state of Minnesota have conveyed to me, why should I, in Alexandria, Fergus Falls, Perham, anywhere in the state of Minnesota, have to pay tax dollars, and should we have to pay tax dollars for any of that type of activity? when it goes over the top like that.
Well, some say this legislation is a reaction to the Black Lives Matter movement. Black Lives Matter shut down the Mall of America during 2015 holiday season. They've stopped light rail, blocked access to freeways, as you mentioned, and airports. For those that were arrested and charged, judges dropped or reduced most charges. So shouldn't the decisions better be left to police and judges on a case-by-case basis rather than coming through the legislature to craft a law to create penalties?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know that law enforcement should have the opportunity to have that kind of discretion. A judge, however, does have the discretion. However, the judge also has statutes that have to be dealt with that are passed by the legislature, and it's the legislature's responsibility to give the judge the tools to work with. Law enforcement, quite frankly, gets their marching orders from the legislature, so they really don't have a whole lot to say about this other than the fact that they have to respond. And in some cases, most recently here in Minnesota, yes, they do get very involved. They get injured. That's really unfortunate. So if a judge decides to reduce the case, that's certainly something he or she has to deal with, but we think the sanctions should be a little bit tougher.
Well, and let's just be clear, the one bill would increase penalties for, do you want to explain that?
Yeah, that brings it from a misdemeanor to a gross misdemeanor, which is a fine up to $1,000 or, a lot stiffer fine than a misdemeanor. So the judge would then have the opportunity to, if they so choose, to drop it from a gross misdemeanor down to a misdemeanor. Right now it sounds like they're dropping it from a misdemeanor to a petty misdemeanor, which is a very, very trivial type crime in our whole judicial system.
Those who advocate for change say that the only way to get the public's attention is to interrupt their daily routines. Representative John Lish was quoted by CNN as saying, "Inconvenience is the heart of protest. If you're being inconvenienced, the likelihood of you listening is drastically lower." So it's remarkable that all these unarmed young black men were being shot at all over the nation and no one cared until you had to take a detour to get to the mall. Is this a persuasive argument?
Unfortunately, that does actually happen. I mean, obviously, the more I guess you could call it, the louder the protest, the more people are going to start listening. There's no question about that. But Black Lives Matter really are really not part of this. To me, all lives matter, and I wouldn't want to have a freeway blocked or law enforcement or a medical person was actually dealing with somebody from Black Lives Matter that might be injured or a heart attack, or one of their fathers, mothers, or daughters that might need medical attention. And what do? They run up against a roadblock, an actual roadblock on I-94, where they have to somehow figure out to get turned around and get to their emergency, to the destination. And if somebody were to become injured more so, or actually die, heaven forbid, from something like this, there's no question. I think the general public thinks the group has now gotten over the top, and it has to be dealt with a little more harshly. And I don't think a gross misdemeanor violation is on the line.
And to be clear, your bill is just saying major trunk highways. It's not saying, say, Summit Avenue or some other street. People can still protest there. They just can't protest on major thoroughfares.
That's right. And good organized protests. A lot of times your folks will get permits even from cities that say we're going to be here on such and such a day. If the media wants to, pick up on that, I guess it's their right to do that. And that's good. We shouldn't stifle that. We just can't do that in our country. The First Amendment is near and dear to everybody and should always be treated with the utmost respect. But when it goes over the top, when people become injured, could potentially become injured, and in the case of St. Paul, the cost has been nearly $500,000 to the city of St. Paul. Then I think along with most Minnesotans, there has to be something done.
Well, Governor Dayton was asked about this last week. He recalled his own actions during an anti-Vietnam protest. He recalled Nixon's efforts to quash public dissent, both illegal and legal at the time. In terms of expenses to the public, he said the public already pays expenses for all kinds of activities. Sure. And like you, he draws a line with airports and interstate highways. So there's some common ground, but your other bill, can you talk about the other one? It doesn't have a hearing soon, but...
It's recovering expenses?
Yes, recovering expenses.
Well, yes, if in fact these activities go on as have gone on in the most recent times here, where you you actually stop commerce or you stop emergency services on a freeway or a major thoroughfare in the state of Minnesota, or you actually block people from public transit, then the people that are called out, whether they're off-duty officers, off-duty deputies, off-duty fire departments, depending upon who they are, that becomes a public cost. And the general public that I represent, and I like to think I represent some common thinking folks, think, you know, those dollars should be recovered. They really should. They shouldn't have to pay for that. And unfortunately, sometimes we end up with cars that are vandalized, that are set on fire. If this is what's going on, quite frankly, the people need to know that they're really losing their voice, and that's really unfortunate.
Senator Ingebrigtsen, we have to stop there, but thanks for coming today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Prior to the House hearing on the bill that would increase penalties for highway protests, House lawmakers held a press conference.
Our caucus very much respects the right and wants to protect the right for people to peacefully protest and assemble. We think that's a very basic core right that people have in this country, and we want to protect that. But we also know there is a point where one person's rights end and another's begins. And frankly, if one life is lost because an ambulance can't get to a home or a business and respond to an emergency medical situation, it's one life too many.
$2.5 million has been expended by property taxpayers in Minneapolis and St. Paul as a result of the law enforcement costs related to policing this illegal activity. All that $2.5 million is all in overtime law enforcement costs, policing something that's already illegal. There's a cost to that. I understand the governor's discomfort with that approach. And so in speaking with Representative Lomer and Speaker Dowd, the one thing I think we can all agree on, the very sensible approach, the common sense approach to this, is to say, okay, let's increase the criminal penalties and let's do what we can to prevent these protesters from causing a serious public safety issue in blocking the freeways, closing the airport, or interfering with mass transit.
My next guest also has a background in law enforcement and has personally dealt with protesters. Now joining me in the studio is Senator Dan Schoen. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
When the bill that would allow state agencies to sue convicted protesters for costs related to their demonstrations in a House committee, protesters shut down that meeting. What are your thoughts on this bill, which Senator Ingebrigtsen has authored in the Senate?
I think that them showing up and shutting down that meeting is a really strong example of how a lot of people in society are feeling about their government right now, and it's about the responsiveness. It doesn't mean that, you know, it shouldn't be accountability for actions. There are accountability measures in our law currently. If there is something that happens, if there's damages that are incurred to a property owner, they can recoup those costs now. I mean, there are civil remedies for that. What I'm fearful of is that these particular pieces of legislation send a message that our government is trying especially hard to target one particular area that people feel like they don't like people standing up against their government. And I get personally upset when I see my partners out on the highway get rocks dropped on their head from an overpass. I find it deplorable. I find it ridiculous, and swift and heavy consequences should be levied to those people. The idea that because of an unrest that someone doesn't agree with, that we should take extra measures to make sure that people have to not be heard or have to fear sending their message, really is a step that we need to be cautious about. It doesn't mean that there's not ideas of merit within these pieces of legislation, but we need to be very careful about the message that we send to the public, even by the bills that we introduce.
One of the arguments for this bill is that if you get lost in the boundary waters, you're charged for the cost of your rescue. If you drive your truck on thin ice and it goes in, you are charged to pull your truck out. If you have a medical emergency, you pay for those expenses. So shouldn't protesters, if they're convicted pay for the expenses they incur for the police response and everything else?
Well, first, let's go back to the medical emergency. That's health care. And that people have insurance for that. Yes, you do pay for that, and you submit, the bill gets submitted to your insurance, health insurance company. Always has been. And nothing's changed from that. If you go into the boundary waters, there are several ways that you could incur costs for the rescue that you may need. That requires a lot of forethought. And this is one of those things where if you're one singular individual and you're walking down the lane of down the highway right now, it may not be a protest, but as an officer will come pick you up and bring you off the highway if that's what you need, and you'll pay no extra expenses. So how do you figure out who's going to pay? And they're going to say, well, if you're convicted, well, then how much? How much are you going to pay? Are you going to pay for your percentage? Because if there's 1,000 people out there and there's $1,000 worth of damage, are you the one, do you pay $1? What is the overtime cost? Who gets levied that? I mean, this is the issue that's within these pieces of legislation. They're a lot about emotion and not a lot about fact, and a lot about what is it going to solve. And how do you determine which person pays for all the overtime? Or with the Women's March, they had a permit for 20,000 people, and 100,000 people showed up, including my 11-year-old daughter and 7-year-old son. So how much are they going to pay?
Let's move to the bill that has moved through the House and the Senate, and that's the one that would make it a gross misdemeanor instead of a misdemeanor for blocking traffic. Senator Ingebrigtsen expressed concern for public safety and the safety of law enforcement when things get out of hand. He also pointed out the risk to ambulances and other emergency vehicles for not being able to get through. How should we handle protest that escalates when people get hurt?
Well, that's a whole other level. If people are getting hurt, we can handle that now. But make no mistake about it, there are people, I'm frustrated when I see the highway shut down, and that's my first thought too, is what if an ambulance needed to get to her, or I needed to get to a partner that needed help? Somebody's in their car having a heart attack? Yeah, absolutely. That is very, very troubling to think about. It could happen anywhere. I feel that same way if a train is blocking the railroad tracks, if construction slows you down and you didn't know it. There could be an accident ahead and things could be completely blocked as well. I think what's important is that are we taking away any tools for officers to do the job that they need to do? And I pointed out in committee, if I'm the watch commander, if I'm the supervisor, I don't necessarily want to have a mandate in that statute that all of a sudden, now remember, going from a misdemeanor to a gross misdemeanor means that you go to jail and you spend the weekend in jail. If it's a misdemeanor, you can go to jail and then we can say it's okay to bond out. It also gives the impression to society that there's wiggle room to negotiate with folks. If 500 people lay down on the highway or 1,000 people lay down on the highway, and we're going to arrest every single one of them for a gross misdemeanor, we don't even know how much it's going to cost. Because I might be able to work out a deal with the folks to walk on the highway, because that's what they're going to do. And we say, listen, if you get off, if you're going to enter at Snelling and you're going to get back off at Dale right away, then we'll protect you. If you continue past Dale, then we're going to arrest everybody that goes. And that's absolutely what should happen if there's an agreement. And then they should go to jail. But that might be the difference between 2 hours of a highway closed and 12 hours. So then what happens? We just really need to sit and think about what we're doing. These bills really play to people's emotions and fears, and the fear of what they don't understand or what they don't know. And then it also plays to the fear of being inconvenienced, or the idea that absolutely, what if something were to happen? We deal with that in our business all the time. It's not comfortable. I don't like seeing it. I don't want to be slowed down. None of my friends, I hear from friends from all walks of life who get frustrated with it because they don't understand. And I think some of that is on us as well. We don't understand, so we need to learn and listen about some of the a base of what some of these protests are about. I don't necessarily have to agree with all the points, but I think it's incumbent upon me as a policymaker and as a police officer to be understanding that I really don't want to be seen as trying to be one of those folks that's trying to inhibit your free speech. And you're right, it is not free speech to be on the highway, but it does send a message about what happens here.
Senator Schoen, I want to thank you for coming today. We've run out of time.
All right, thank you.
This week at the Capitol, Republican lawmakers called upon the federal government to redirect its funding for Southwest Light Rail to other Minnesota transportation projects.
The unaccountable, unelected Met Council solely appointed by Governor Mark Dayton is intentionally and willfully seeking to backdoor this project around the voters and around the elected legislature. One of the components of the Federal Transportation Administration's grant process is to review local support for a project. It's time for Minnesota to stand up to Mark Dayton's Met Council and tell him to end this project now.
Not only is the construction cost out of this world, $2 billion, but it's not over at that point. The news flash is that the public is going to be required into perpetuity to continue to subsidize the operating costs, and some 25 years down the road, they'll be subsidizing the replacement costs.
The route would devastate one of the most beautiful and most visited areas of Minneapolis's famous signature chain of lakes.
Also this week, public officials joined families and medical professionals in the fight against opioid addiction.
There isn't a single silver bullet that's going to fix it all. If it was, we'd have fixed it by now. Because a lot of families have been busted up, and people that have been struggling with addiction a long time have been suffering a long time.
We believe on Medicaid, we have about 5,000 chronic opioid users added to Medicaid every year. So 5,000 more people year over year become chronic users of opiates on Medicaid. We have real challenges with the number of babies born who are dependent on opiates. In the last several years, we've had double the number of babies across the state born dependent on opiates than we saw. We have real disparities across the state with American Indian babies being 8 times more likely than white babies on Medicaid to be born addicted to opiates.
You know, the Centers for Disease Control calls the opioid epidemic one of the few public health problems that's getting worse, not better. And we've seen that in Minnesota. Last year in Minnesota, more people died from opioid overdoses than the year before. And so it's important that Minnesota double down on this problem and that we bring together the combined efforts of law enforcement, healthcare, the courts, criminal justice, and families and communities throughout our state to combat this crisis.
According to data collected from 2011 to 2015 by the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs, the unemployment rate for Minnesota veterans is nearly 4.5%, though in some counties it is as high as 15%. A bill moving through the House and the Senate would provide tax credits for employers who hire military veterans. Joining me in the studio is the Senate bill's author, Senator Michael Goggin. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
What prompted you to initiate this legislation?
Well, I see a lot of unemployed vets out there. I hear it on the news all the time. And when I was growing up, I was really impacted by the Vietnam vets coming back. And so ever since then, I've always wanted to be able to help out our vets as best I can. And when I see the veterans that come to work at my place of employment outside of here, they really bring a great skill set to the company and a great work ethic. And I just want to make it so that other companies in the state will go after hiring these vets and getting these folks hired and take advantage of the skills that they bring.
So the bill has one set for disabled veterans and another set of parameters for unemployed veterans. How many are disabled? How many are unemployed?
Well, right now, the estimate is about 2,500 disabled veterans and about 11,000 just regular veterans are unemployed.
And so what would your bill do? How would it incentivize employers to hire them?
Well, for the disabled, we're going for a $3,000 credit
for the employer to hire a disabled vet, and $1,500 for the other veterans.
And then is this just a one-time tax credit that they can take?
It's a one-time tax credit, yes.
The state already offers targeted tax credits through the internship program and the Minnesota Apprenticeship Initiative. Why do we need another program?
Well, this one helps all of the vets. I mean, the whole goal is to get as many vets hired and working as we possibly can. And the vets are a very proud group of people too. So, you know, this just incentivizes our employers to, you know, go out and seek those vets out and, you know, get them hired and into the workforce.
In a recent article in Twin Cities Business, Jim Finley, who is the Director of Veterans Employment Services at DEED, was quoted as saying, "The problem in Minnesota is not unemployment, it's underemployment." There's a lot of veterans out there who have 2 part-time jobs, or they're working jobs where their qualifications exceed the work that they do. Would your bill help these vets?
That's the intention, really, is to help those vets out, because it gives these other employers, you know, an incentive to go after those vets that have the specialized skill sets, and that's the whole goal, is to get them to their full employment.
How much will this program cost?
It's estimated about $18 million per year.
And so do you think this is something the state will be able to finance?
I think we can get that through. I really do. You know, it's important that we get these veterans working and give them a sense, you know, that, like I said earlier, they're very proud and they don't want handouts or anything. So this gives us an opportunity to get those vets into careers that they can really pursue and stay with.
If passed, would this tax credit expire at any point, or does it just go on?
It's going to continue on. It'll continue on.
Now, the House version is about the same point as the Senate version right now, and I noticed that the House bill has bipartisan support. There are DFLers that are co-authors on this. Are you looking for the same for your bill in the Senate?
Oh, most definitely. That's what I came up here to do, is to work with not only my Republican caucus but also the Democratic caucus. I like to work across the lines. I like to just you know, make sure that we have bipartisan support, and because this is important to all of our vets, and it shouldn't be just one party over another party. So I definitely am going after the Democrats as well for support on this.
Now, I read somewhere that there's some language about homeless vets. How do homeless vets play into this?
Well, this again will help the homeless vets too, where we go out, we've got a list of, you know, the state has a list of homeless vets, so we can go out and help get those folks back into the workforce as well. Because that's, again, it goes back to the pride. They just don't want to go ask for a handout or anything like that. And so this will help our vets, especially the homeless vets, get into the workforce again.
Senator Goggin, I want to thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Join us again next week as we delve into more topics affecting Minnesotans. I'm Shannon Lurkey, and on behalf of all of us at Senate Media Services, thanks for watching.